Hoy tengo el honor de presentarles a Craig Carroll, profesor experto en reputación y comunicación. Él ha impartido docencia en la Universidad Pública de Nueva York, en The Conference Board, en el IE Business School, entre otras. El Dr. Carroll cuenta además con una extensísima actividad en términos de publicación de artículos y de libros de referencia, como The Sage Encyclopedia of Corporate Reputation, Corporate Reputation and the News Media, o The Handbook of Communication and Corporate Reputation. Craig, además, es un honor contar con él como miembro de nuestro comité científico en Corporate Excellence y es además un gran amigo. Nos conocemos desde hace más de una década y hemos compartido inquietudes, aprendizajes, descubrimientos, hemos asistido juntos a muchísimos congresos en este campo que es un interés común para ambos, la gestión y la medición de la reputación corporativa. Hoy hablaremos en inglés y volaremos a Nueva York para conocer y reflexionar junto a Craig.
Una cuestión de reputación. Edición especial por el 10º aniversario de Corporate Excellence, Center for Reputation Leadership.
So if you agree, we start with this idea. So thank you very much indeed for being there.
Well, this is certainly a time where all these issues are coming together in terms of business and society. So when we're thinking about the role of companies today, right, we've got several factors that are going on. One, certainly the research on trust is showing that trust in, government or media or traditional institutions has been on the decline. And, but I would say there's actually a little bit of a K curve. We have trust in some institutional forms, some organizational forms that's going up. And then we have others that are going down at the same time, right? So there's certainly one time where FANG, Facebook and Amazon and Netflix and others were like just complete leaders. And they still are in some respects, but others, because of issues with society and technology and some of the issues that we're facing tied to disinformation and privacy are getting us to rethink some of these relationships with some organizations. But on the whole, some companies are stepping up. They're realizing the importance of purpose and that there are traditional institutions that have failed, and through corporate and private partnerships, they're able to accomplish more, or corporate public partnerships are able to accomplish more by working together. And then I think also realizing that it's not just enough to have a business purpose and to serve just your stockholders. And so this new focus on stakeholder capitalism is really catching on now.
Yes. When you talk about trust and coming to the trust barometer by Edelman, you see, it's 21 years. And what we have seen this year is that for the first time, companies are ranking number one compared to other institutions. What is the reason why companies are?
I think for one thing, companies are transcending the traditional borders, right? So with the pandemic going on and, countries thinking about their own citizenship there, but the pandemic and all of COVID-19 has forced companies to step up for their employees, to think about getting their employees out of the office, to think about solutions with the vaccination, thinking about how to work with or collaborate with the government in the time period of disinformation. So those are three things that right now have really forced companies to step up, and that's had an impact on the degree of trust. First, it's not that we've had no reason to trust them, and it's certainly that we're seeing lapses in other institutions, but this has been an opportunity to step up and to rise to the occasion.
Yes, I fully agree with you. It's a kind of a window of opportunity for companies, but not for all companies. So I would like to speak a little bit about how companies with a brilliant future ahead should be organized. How do you see companies in the future?
Yeah, I see two trends. One is the focus on, I'm going to say ESGD, because now we're realizing that there's a lot in terms of digital responsibility, right? Now that we've spent a year of working remote, so it's no longer about just environmental, societal, and governance issues. It's also thinking about the role of digital transformation, right? So I think one is combining ESG with some of the challenges in the digital revolution and the fourth industrial revolution. The second is the companies are in the future are going to have to focus on sustainability, but I want to use sustainability in a different way than what most people think of with ESG. For me, sustainability is not just about the environment. It's also, when we're thinking about creating a better future, it's also about innovation, continuity management, and what I want to add is organizational learning and development, right? Thinking about our collective responsibilities, thinking about how we learn, how we grow, how we co-create, how we think about new business models. So it's truly just the way you put it, right? With a focus on the future. Sustainability is largely about the future, and it's thinking about new ways of not only meeting the future, but creating the future that we want, right? The best way to predict the future is to create it. I can't remember who said that, but
it sounds good.
Someone else has said that before me.
You mentioned that one of the trends is this idea of long-term capitalism or conscious capitalism. There are many or stakeholders capitalism. How do you see how they present the role of companies from that perspective?
Got it. I'm actually going to expand it. For me, it's no longer just about stakeholders. I use the idea of campus networks, constituents, audiences, markets, publics, users, and stakeholders, because I think it's important that we've made the move from stockholders to stakeholders. That's absolutely crucial to everything. But I don't believe that everybody is a stakeholder. And there's some things that when we're thinking about this collective future, that we do have to think about everybody. And that means thinking beyond our stakeholders. So when I think about this idea of a campus network, it's realizing that we also have constituents, right? There's people, whether you're thinking about the board voting or a local community voting, but constituents are largely about public decisions being made, right? Where we're coming together to vote, and we're making a decision as a group. So that's the first thing I would say is it's great that we've shifted from stockholders to stakeholders, but now we also need to be aware that there's also the general public that we need to be thinking about as well, and beyond that.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think are the most important drivers which are pushing the direction of having this change in the
Well, I would say the most important drivers. Well, certainly purpose is the ultimate driver, right, for this. So I think I'm going to think about drivers in three ways, but probably the biggest is the idea of purpose in the sense of reputation. Is the only reputations that matter are those that are driven by our purpose is what I would say there, right? It's, you have to be clear about who you are, what role that you're serving, and that's going to some degree dictate where you play, what you do, and who you interact with, which then becomes the basis for whatever reputation that you form. Okay, so the first is it's recognizing that we have a role already in our reputations by being aware of what our purpose is, and if we're not aware, creating it or detecting it or uncovering it, or sometimes just simply deciding it and committing to it.
Well, in fact, when you mention reputation, it's a field where you have been working so hard and your contribution is so important that I would like to evolve in that, to have your thinking about reputation.
Sure. So I would say, thinking about the drivers or the levers there, I'm going to name 5. One is that, right? First, we got to start with the compelling purpose. It's got to be clear. It's got to be compelling. And then it's got to be clearly compelling to start with. The second driver that I think we need to be thinking about is mindset. And I'm going to link mindset to organizational design. And by mindset, it's recognizing that it's not just enough to have a good strategy, but it's recognizing, it's believing that that you can accomplish your strategy. It's believing that purpose is important. It's believing that strategy is important. It's believing that co-creation is important. So the idea of mindset and what we believe is possible and what we believe about what we need to be doing is super important. So I think we need to have greater clarity on that, because it is a driver whether we recognize it or not. But I think what I want to link mindset to is linking it to organizational design and helping companies to think about how they're organized to take action on those beliefs and to recognize that what they believe really matters, and that if they believe in their purpose, if they believe in their societal purpose, then they can accomplish more by working together. The third, I talked a little bit about campus, the idea of constituents, audiences, markets, publics, users, stakeholders. So I think it's important to think just beyond stakeholders to these other groups as well. But I would say this idea of campuses, or I'm going to say campus listening and responsiveness. So another driver is thinking about reputation as feedback. So recognizing that we need to be listening, and we need to not only listen, but we need to take action and respond accordingly to what we learn. So that requires being engagement with your stakeholders and being present, being aware, being in conversation is like what we're doing here, and then responding in a way for quick activation. And that's where the idea of the mindset and the organizational design comes into play, is that when we learn something new that we need to take action on, we need to be organized in a way that we can fluidly respond quickly to the needs of the market. And that also entails feedback reporting. So it's not just enough to acquire the feedback. It also means that we need to report that feedback to other people within the organization who are impacted by that feedback or who are responsible for that feedback. It affects what they do. It affects how they do it, or they are the ones that are actually taking action on that feedback. And then we need to think about feedback in the sense of reporting back to our stakeholders to let them know how we took action on what they gave us, right? To let them know that we're listening and we're responding, and some of our ideas and actions are growing based on feedback that they give us. And I think the last driver lever is going to be metrics, thinking about scorecards for the purpose of evaluating our progress on the journey, thinking about our growth, thinking about measurement, but always moving the needle and making sure that every day we're making a little bit of progress.
That's a very interesting point. And you see, I was thinking while I was listening to you that we started talking about reputation in the corporate arena 25 years ago with Von Bloom's book. So it's been 25 years. So how do you see?
You're right. It's been 25 years since that book came out. That's yeah. And I still remember when the book came out. Yeah. And wow. Yeah. So a lot has changed. Some things have not changed. Good grief. Probably the biggest change that I've seen, I'm going to refer to a different K curve, is that one of the biggest changes has been that we see on one hand the upward movement towards connecting reputation to strategy and to governance and getting it into the boardroom. That's a pretty powerful idea. It's no longer just communications and marketing, but we're actually getting it into the hands of the senior leadership and getting it into the hands of the board in the ideal scenario. Probably somewhat disappointing is the tactical role, right? I've seen just as many organizations that have embraced reputation as a fashion, if you will, right? There's a lot of good books and ideas on it. They know that they need to be doing it. They're being asked about it. And then the CCO delegates it to somebody on his or her team, right? So they feel like they don't have time for it, or they've got other things on their plate. So I've also seen it lose a little bit of its luster by it being handed off as a project as opposed to a purpose.
And when you mention purpose, I would like to have your opinion about the link between purpose and reputation.
I can't think of a more important link there. And I think if anything, purpose has reactivated the power of reputation. So for me, the model is very simple. In a very quantitative statistical sense, reputation mediates the relationship between purpose and legacy. So it's not all about reputation. Reputation is just one metric on the journey, right? It's where we are today. It's feedback on how well we're accomplishing our purpose, right? And that the way that we incorporate feedback from our reputation impacts our longer term legacy, right? So, but it's a yin and yang. They go together, purpose and reputation. Purpose is the primary driver of reputation, and reputation is the feedback on how well you are accomplishing that purpose.
Yeah, sometimes I think about purpose and reputation in a complementary way. Thinking about the needs of companies, and there is a basic need, which is long-lasting differentiation and authenticity in that differentiation. And I see that purpose is working on that. And it's not only about differentiation, it's also about your license to operate. Because if you go too far on differentiation, you may lose this one. So it's...
That's great, right? And that sense alone, that's feedback right there. If you lose your license, right? If you lose your license, you're going to lose your existence, your right. So that's a perfect example right there. So yes, they are intertwined. One cannot exist without the other. Now, it doesn't mean that a positive purpose will necessarily lead to a positive reputation, because reputation's feedback, right? So you could have a positive purpose and a negative reputation. Well, that's feedback. That tells you need to change something if you're going to fulfill your purpose, or if you're going to live beyond and have some type of legacy beyond the moment.
I like this idea of a feedback, a purpose. Let's see, how can I say that? A feedback-driven organization.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Yeah, so it's so when you think about purpose, it's helping us to get clear on who we are, what we're doing, who we're doing it with, and it also dictates who matters when we're thinking about reputation, because not every data point that exists out there in the universe should count as reputation, right? So, we need to be careful about who we listen to and what feedback that we take in. And I'm scared to say that, because I think right now companies aren't listening enough, right? They're listening to some groups, but they're not listening to others. So I think I want to keep it open to recognize that it's listening, but there's some degree of being aware of what gets said, who gets to say it, and who gets to say what our reputation is.
Craig, I would like to finish this conversation by asking you your opinion about Corporate Excellence Center for Reputation Leadership, because we have been there for 10 years, and I would like to have your feedback.
Well, sure. Okay. Number one, I think you're a great model for the rest of us, right? I mean, this is a great model where something in Europe is driving global conversation. So first of all, I want to say congratulations on what you've accomplished. And I would say personally, for me, you're a role model with what you've done there. You've certainly expanded my own eyes, not only practically speaking, but also conceptually speaking too, and theoretically, right? I mean, the work that you've done in terms of building a coalition and getting companies to come together was, for me, a seed in recognizing the power of reputation as a conversation starter. And it's the perfect example of why reputation by itself is isolated if it's not connected to a larger purpose, if it's not about the larger conversation. So the work that you're doing is already, for me, embodying that idea of feedback, and also embodying that idea that not all reputations matter, but it's the reputations about your purpose, right? There's something in our souls, something about who we are as people and about who we work with and the types of work that we do that says reputation is like this one word catch-all for everything that's important to us that we need to address, right? Where changes need to occur. So, and I think the example I saw was through your coalitions, right? Bringing people together from different companies, number one. Second, with it being a nonprofit organization, is just extremely powerful as an idea, right? To show that there is this noble purpose there. So that, for the field, those working in corporate reputation. That's a great model and a great mindset to recognize that there's something inspiring and tied to who we are as people that motivates us to grow and to develop. So I think if it were just another conference, if it were just another function of a company, it probably wouldn't have the power that you have by working together and assembling people outside of different companies there.
I have a question for you on that, because you mentioned two different things very generously about corporate excellence. There's a third component, which is corporate excellence in the last 10 years has been building an ecosystem of knowledge and innovation, setting up alliances with academics and with consultancy firms in a very, let's say, a clear way where there is no conflicts of interest. How do you see this model of linking companies with consultants and with academics?
I think you're transcending that conflict of interest, right? You're helping everyone to recognize that we are truly in an ecosystem, right? For me, you were the first living example of what an ecosystem looked like by bringing these people together, right? That you helped to expand the vision. And not only expand the vision, but expand the possibilities and expand our thinking down the road to know who else is working in this area. What are they doing? And wow, that idea in this other sector here impacts what I'm doing. It's unrelated. It's not as an academic, this is something going on in corporate or on the agency side, but it shows that we all learn in our ecosystem or in this environment by collaborating. So, you mentioned the competition, right? I think you're helping us show that we can no longer live in this competitive space, that it has to be collaborative. We all benefit when we're coming together. So, when we grew up, I'm going to say we, like you and I, like about the same time period, but when we grew up, we always heard that groups accomplish more than individuals. That's why we work together as a team, as a company, or as a group of people. We can accomplish more by working together than we can accomplish on our as individuals. And I would say COVID-19 and this marker of your 10th anniversary is the perfect time to reflect on how that idea no longer scales. It's no longer viable for society. Today, it's about how organizations and their stakeholders accomplish more than organizations can accomplish on their own. Right? So we need to be in collaboration, in conversation, and in co-creation with a variety of stakeholders and others in our ecosystem here. If we're going to create solutions, we cannot go it alone. We cannot compete on our own. We cannot work in isolation. But society suffers when we think from a competitive mindset of how we need to distinguish ourselves from others, or we need to protect ourselves from others, or we cannot share information or share ideas. We need to find ways to bring all of our ideas to the table and collaborate and co-create together, where everyone has some piece of the puzzle at a societal level, right? So our piece of the puzzle is no longer the puzzle. Our piece of the puzzle, our face of the company, or that one puzzle piece, is now part of a much larger collage of society, where every other piece of the puzzle of every other company face and every other competitor together, we've got a larger fabric that we're looking at designing and taking responsibility for.
I'm absolutely delighted to hear this way of understanding the future of organizations, because it resonates on the purpose itself, the purpose of corporate excellence. And I'm very proud to have you on board. And we set up this collaboration with you many years ago. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. And now it's time to really do more together. But I will say this is a good time to kind of reflect on that, because we're at this moment in society where I think everyone's waking up to realize that we have to think about co-creating for survival. And you did it 10 years ago, not for survival, but just for innovation and learning and bringing people together. And now it's taking on a much larger purpose, and everyone's realizing they can't survive without it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
I know. Pleasure to see you. Thanks for the opportunity to join you in the invitation here today.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Has escuchado Una Cuestión de Reputación, conducido por Ángela Llosa. Te esperamos en nuestra conferencia anual el 25 de noviembre del 2021. Y si te gustaría saber más sobre la gestión de intangibles, te invitamos a visitar nuestra web en www.corporateexcellence.org.